in a suburb of Beijing. He was raised by his mother and grandmother. But when he was young, his mother went away to work in a bigger city to earn more money to send back home to support the family. This is common practice in China, where a family member or members will leave home to find work elsewhere, often leaving partners, parents, children at home alone for months at a time. Song Dong-ye remembers when he was young that he was particularly interested in anything to do with music.
反正他们说我从特别小的时候就对音乐的东西特别敏感，比如说新闻联播那个片头曲，小时候我可喜欢了。当当当当当当当当当当当当。
Even though many children in China learn to play instruments when they are very young, I'm sure most of us have seen some 5-year-old prodigy playing Liszt on YouTube, questioning our own existence as a musician. But being a professional musician in China is a risky career. You have to gig every day for very little money. I asked my students whether their parents would approve if they wanted to pursue a music career. Regardless of the child's talent or love for music, just 5% of parents would strongly support their child. 15% would support. A massive 60% would not approve of their child pursuing a music education. And 20% would strongly disagree with their child becoming a musician. Friends and family actively discouraged him not to become a musician. Instead, to study hard and find a real job. Something more stable. Musicians around the world have had this exact conversation with their friends and loved ones. What are you going to do for money? When are you going to get a real job? My personal favourite from my parents was, you can't eat your guitar, can you? Parents and loved ones can't usually accept this type of wild, adventurous life.
每个家长都是这样的，都是希望孩子好好学习，有个好工作，有个好前途，这是最稳妥的办法。孩子一天到晚的你不学习，你辞工作，你拿什么吃啊？你扛着这把琴你就吃饭了，你成不成？你不行。所以他们可能不太接受这种冒险式的成长方式。
Even though Song Dong-ye knew many successful folk musicians, they still had a very tough life.
当时知道，如果想靠做音乐来养家糊口、来生活的话，这也太难了。因为看到太多失败的例子了，就包括那会儿我的刚开始做民谣的时候，我的偶像万晓利啊，喜欢的那些歌手张伟伟、李志他们的生活也很一般。
Gigs were hard to find, and China doesn't really have a go out and watch a gig kind of culture. So unless you're a superstar, you're literally background music.
第一次专场是2010年8月7号。那一天来了20个人，都是朋友，全都是各路的朋友，大学同学、中学同学都来了。然后后来第二场的时候就变成1个人、2个人，然后最惨的时候是没有人。老板说：“那你就回去吧，钱可能老板给个打车费。”
After his house was demolished in Anheqiaobei to make way for newer developments, he moved to a new house with his grandmother. The drive to create physically impressive cities requires ever greater segregation among classes.
安河桥拆迁款买的现在这套房子。安河桥拆迁了之后，我奶奶就一直跟我在一块住。然后她身体特别不好，有各种冠心病啊，然后各种什么腿也不好，然后也有点老年痴呆。就可能早上我出去上班的时候跟我说：“哎呀，好好上班啊，路上注意安全。”然后晚上回家不认识我了。跟我说你是谁呀？上我们家干嘛了？你跟我说实话，你到底是不是小兵张嘎？我说我真不是。当时就在想，是不是要这辈子上一辈子班，做一辈子图书销售，就是很重要，因为那样会稳定，会让各种人都满意，但是只有自己不满意。
In the song Anheqiao, Song Dong-ye is reflecting on his childhood, particularly with reference to his own relationship with him and his grandmother. Grandparents raising children in China is a common occurrence since the 1980s as a result of the one-child policy. 4 grandparents, 2 parents and 1 child is the principal style of raising a child because it's more convenient for the parents to return to work surrounded by the help of their parents to help raise their child.
咸菜是小卖部老板友情资助，家里面脏乱差，各种臭烘烘。所有有意思的事儿，或者很感动的事儿，或者很生气的事儿、很遗憾的事情，都是在那儿发生的。比如说我在那儿学的吉他，什么兄弟友情啦、爱情啦，然后也不知道几点睡，不知道几点醒，突然间下午3点醒了，被电话吵醒的，说你好，请问是宋冬野先生吗？我说是啊。你好，我们是摩登天空。理想来了。因为摩登天空这4个字，我操，在我们这些做独立音乐人眼里，那就是神呀！我当时第一反应就是骗子，肯定是骗子，不可能，肯定是特别了解这个圈的骗子。结果上网一查，那电话还真是摩登天空，然后我就特别胆战心惊的去了。去了之后，摩登的人也特别痛快，直接给我甩了份合同，跟我说我们要签你。董小姐其实不意味着什么，很日常的一个歌。但是对于现在来说，它可能对于我来说挺重要的，走音乐这条路上很重要的一个歌。
Dong Xiaojie, or Miss Dong, was Song Dong-ye's first ever single. The song was written about his longtime friend and classmate, Miss Dong. The song was written using a combination of stories from Miss Dong coupled with Song Dong-ye's own life experiences. Most of the listeners thought that the song was an ode to an ex-lover, with the lyric, I fell in love with a wild horse, but my home doesn't have a grassland. It sounded like a song written by somebody who could not meet the requirements of an ex-girlfriend. Song Dong-ye explains it as, actually, there is no special story. She is just a friend. She is just a friend with many experiences and stories, along with 6 other songs on the album. The song is set in the dramatic mode, giving you a feeling that he is singing directly to Dong Xiaojie, probably fueling the rumours that he and Dong Xiaojie were actually a couple. The song follows the AB song form, a song form that has been popular since the 1960s. Song Dong-ye uses this song form exclusively throughout the An Ke Qiaobei album, always sticking to this verse-chorus style of song. Even though the AAA or strophic song form is popular within the folk music genre in China and throughout the world, he never once employs this change in style. The introduction outlines these chords below, which are the chords from the verse. Using existing harmonic material is a common way to construct an introduction. Song Dong-ye often extends his chords with sus2 and add9 chords, and these sparse yet recognizable instrumental parts introduce many of Song Dong-ye's songs and help establish the style and mood of the song. is 8 bars in length, and 8-bar verses are prevalent throughout the album, on all except one song. He plays 2 verses back to back before the introduction of the first chorus. The double verse is useful for creating a story and building tension and momentum towards a chorus. The melody in bar 4 ends on a major third, giving an unfinished feeling to the phrase, emphasized further with a 1 and 2 chord in the accompaniment. The lyrics within bar 1 to 4 have a much more serious, negative and thought-provoking subject matter, lending weight to the unresolved feeling at the end of the bar. In contrast to bars 1 to 4, the melody in bar 8 ends on the tonic, with the accompaniment also playing a simple major chord to highlight the feeling of resolution. It's reinforced by the positive and lighter lyrical content. Song Dong-ye brings forward some imagery of a smile as beautiful as the clear water that flows under a bridge near his home in Beijing. Using this real-world imagery, the listener can attach some real-life image to the lyric. The melody in bars 9 to 12 mirror that of bars 1 to 5, resolving to the third instead of the tonic, again emphasizing the melancholic feeling of the lyric. The final phrase of the verse in bar 11 Even though there has been a harmonic change, the melody in the vocal starts on the major 7th note of the subdominant chord, giving a much weaker, less obvious feeling of harmonic change. The first 2 bars of the chorus contain a deceptive cadence of 4-5-3-6, tricking you into believing you are heading back to the 1 chord, instead going to a different chord, allowing you to continue the idea without the feeling of resolution. In bars 3 and 4, we hear a 4-5-1 perfect cadence. But when the vocal lands on the major third of the chord, it feels like the 1 chord is functioning like a 5 chord, pushing us back into the 4 subdominant chord in bar 5. In bar 7, the lyric of Desperate lands on the 4 chord, giving a graver feeling to the lyric. This is followed by another perfect cadence, with the lyric Dong Xiaojie landing on the tonic on the first beat of the bar on the 1 chord, giving a complete sense of resolution. There's an 8-bar cello instrumental which is accompanied by the guitar. The cello plays a completely unrelated melody to the song. This musical variation makes the song more exciting, relieving that sense of monotony, giving us a complete break from the simple repetitive melody of the verse and chorus. Every song on the album has a prominent solo section, all featuring a melody that is complete contrast to the main song melody. The outro also contains a vocal instrumental accompanied sparsely by a single drone note on the cello and randomly picked notes on the guitar, outlining the harmony sometimes only with a single note. In this section, the vocal melody strays from the major pentatonic scale and uses the fourth interval scale quite frequently to imply a subdominant chord. In 2016, Song Dong-ye was caught by the police with 80 grams of marijuana. Possessing drugs in China is a serious crime, even in such small amounts. The public and government attribute the deaths of anti-drug police to the drug takers themselves, pitting the whole population against a sole figure when they get caught. Even though he received no prison sentence or real punishment for drug possession, Song Dong-ye was banned from performing indefinitely. Artists in China are constantly under scrutiny for their behaviour because they are held in such high regard as role models and ambassadors for the country. In recent times, China's most famous actress, Fan Bingbing, whose screen time on Chinese TV was second only to President Xi Jinping, was recently caught in a tax avoidance scandal, where the government detained her for 4 months while she paid the $70 million in unpaid taxes, with a fine totaling $129 million. Even though she has paid for her crime, since being disappeared last year, she's only made occasional public appearances to advocate the glory of the communist state. During the Cultural Revolution between 1966 and 1976, artists were accused of harming traditional Chinese values if they didn't appease the new governmental rules that encouraged them to create art that reflected the evolutionary spirit of the time. These vague rules and harsh punishments that followed were only able to be implemented because of the government's influence on the population and the power that the government gave them. For instance, an ordinary citizen could accuse somebody of anything they deemed harmful to Chinese values, solely to bury old grudges. And people would always side with the accuser, fearing that they would be next. Some of the most famous artists in China were subjected to torture and public humiliation, with their homes and artworks seized and destroyed.